Hey, welcome back to another episode of Heroes and Videos. Today we're going to be looking at some back issues I picked up recently. Stick around, we're going to talk about a cover issue that I have with a lot of books, a lot of old books. I'm wondering if you've ever noticed this little idiosyncrasy as well. We've got some Flash, we've got some Daredevil, X-Men, a Jim Starlin run that I was not aware of, and I consider myself kind of a huge Jim Starlin fan. But there's a book I discovered some back issues of. I had no idea he worked on this book. Plus, bet you didn't know Thor appeared in Shang-Chi's magazine before Shang-Chi did. If that's got you curious, and a really odd a storyline of Thor basically blowing off the early Avengers, which is kind of wild. And we'll have a look at the first appearance of a certain web slinger, the Amazing Spider-Man, and how it takes me back to not my childhood necessarily. Yeah, I guess it does. And some stuff with my parents, which is really cool. So stick around to the end of that. Would love it if you did all the wonderful YouTube things, hit notifications, hit like, subscribe, all that stuff so you get notified when we have new content up. And with no further ado, let's get right into it. First up is Crisis number 8. Apologize, I have not had a chance to rebag these things. That's a bit of an idiosyncrasy with me. I rebag books after I buy them. Haven't got a chance to do these, so you might have a little glare. I will be taking great care of them as I show them to you, though. This is Crisis number 8, the final fate of the Flash. At least it was the final fate as far as 1985 went. A little crazy to think about this with the little box down below. DC was 50 years old, apparently, at that point. I guess DC started in 1935, which is a few years ahead of a certain Man of Steel. But this is Crisis on Infinite Earths number 8. George Perez doing the inside, Marv Wolfman. There's George Perez doing his best Jack Kirby impression of Darkseid there. Really good book. I don't know how this hit you guys if the first time you read it. It really struck me. I wasn't the biggest DC fan when Crisis came out. I was a Marvel kid as a kid, and still am, kind of like a Marvel zombie, if you will. Not those Marvel zombies, but I was into all things Marvel back then, and rarely read DC. Read some Legion of Superheroes, but didn't read the Flash. I think I had maybe one or two Flash comics, but that early issue of Crisis where Batman sees Flash pretty much from the future, I guess, disintegrate before his eyes. Oh, sorry, spoiler for Crisis if you haven't, 40-year-old book there. But then when that comes about, Barry Allen is, it's quite a way that he went out. And this is just a really good book, and you can find it. They're not that expensive. But here's the thing about the covers that bug me, and I'm curious if other people have noticed this as well. Usually it's down here in the bottom, but when a cover is actually drawn and it looks like it's missing a corner, see this little spot up here? It's not missing that corner. That's just the edge of the anti-monitor or monitor, whoever's the bad guy here, whose legs we're looking between, as creepy as that sounds. But see that's just the yellow background that's part of the cover. But because it's cut off right there at the corner, it looks like it's dog-eared, or it looks like it's missing the piece. Well, it's not. That's actually the way the book's drawn. More often than not, I found this little oddity shows up in this corner of books, and I'm just curious. One day I'm gonna pull together. I'm gonna start setting aside comics that I've noticed like this, because there are more of them out there than you think. And I'll just curious if you guys have any examples of books that the regular cover is just done in such a way that it looks like it's missing a corner. And why they do that? But there's a lot of them out there. Of course, when I'm looking for one, I can never find it. But that's an example there with Crisis 8. Also, speaking of the Flash, picked up this Secret Origins Annual, number 2. It's that kind of, what is that called? Lenticular? They used to do these in the 90s where, you slide one it's I won't say two-dimensional, they're all two-dimensional, but it's a thing where one part of the cover slides across the other. This is not that. It looks like it probably should have been, but it makes for a really odd-looking cover. Wasn't overly impressed with the interior of the book, but it's it's the Secret Origins of apparently Flash 3 and Flash 2, so not Jay Garrick. But I just thought that cover kind of jumped out at me, and it might have been a buck. Speaking of things that jump out at you, the new Daredevil series is crushing it. Daredevil Born Again. At the time of this taping, I think we're something like 6 episodes in. Been meaning to get a review video out there. I'll do that shortly. At this point with my schedule, I think what's going to happen is I'll probably put a review out after the penultimate episode Tuesday. So, maybe leading up to the finale, and then maybe a one about the finale. But just really loving that Daredevil Born Again series. You should be watching it if you are not. This is back issue that I found. 53, Daredevil 53. I loved anything with that red and yellow costume there. You see it's basically in the beginning. It's a Gene Colan. I believe it's Gene Colan. Might be George Tuska. Hang on. It is Gene Colan. It's a Gene Colan cover, and Gene did the inside. It's basically a retelling of Daredevil's origin, which is pretty cool. And it's just kind of neat to see it retold, so you get to see some of that old costume there. You get to see it retold with Gene Colan doing the art. And I'm not saying that's better than Wally Wood. I'm more of a Wally Wood fan than a Gene Colan fan. But I love that cover too. Just such a pretty cover, and it presents well. And I do need to get it into a new bag and board. Next up is a Daredevil Punisher book, but it's not the Daredevil Punisher book you may be thinking of, or any of the Daredevil Punisher books you may be thinking of. Fun fact, I haven't read or I haven't looked at most of these books that I just picked up. This is a Daredevil Punisher battle. This is Daredevil 292. This is Daredevil Punisher from the 90s, I'm going to guess, looking at that. Oh yeah, 50 years, so 1991. Just when I'd opened my shop and comics were crushing it, the beginning of a period that we don't maybe look back on that fondly. It is kind of cool at the beginning of this book. Look who's stepping out of the shadows there in the corner. That is indeed Taskmaster. And it looks like Tombstone, unless this book is just poorly colored down there as well. So I guess this is from a period where they were thinking, hey, it works for Kingpin. Maybe we'll throw Tombstone over in Daredevil as well. It's written by D.G. Chichester and penciled by Lee Weeks. And really do enjoy Lee Weeks' stuff on Daredevil. He does that kind of, not minimalist, but very just clean style with the art. Really good stuff. So as much as that cover screams 90s and kind of gives me a little PTSD when it comes to comics in the 90s, it's the inside of it's, decent. So I look forward to reading it. You ever had the situation where you have so many comics over the years that you bought and sold and you're not really sure if you own a certain book or not? CLZ is great for that. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I bought something and realized I already had it, or thought I had something and realized at some point I had sold it, whether it was in the shop or just over the years. And then every now and then you run into a cover that you've never seen before. And you're like, wait, I know I don't have this book. And sure enough, this fills a little hole I have in my Iron Man collection. Iron Man 257, Showdown with Samurai Steel. I guess Steel Samurai was taken because that feels like a better name. I don't recognize most of these people in here. Randall Friends was the writer. I wonder, that couldn't be Ron, would it? I have to reach out and see. Rich Janezeski, and a whole bunch of different people doing the inks and letters. It's like 2 or 3 groups of people did 2 or 3 different parts of the book. So that's a little odd. But I knew I didn't have it, mainly because I'd never seen the cover. So that's kind of cool. I look forward to reading that book. The last issue of the New Defenders is up next. Loved this book. The whole run was just phenomenal. At this point, they're kind of coming apart, and it's the double-sized last issue. You see Gargoyle there is gargantuan. It looks like Moon Dragon is on his shoulders. I don't know if she's fighting him. I honestly don't remember what happens in this book. I read it when it came out. That's a Valkyrie, I believe, and the Valkyrie, Beast and Angel there. It was it went off the rails a little bit with the new Defender stuff at the towards the end, but yeah, just pound for pound, just a fantastic book, start to finish. My son helped me with a run of those, well up into the 1 teens, I think, of Defenders, and of course I had it as a kid, but didn't have that one currently in my collection, so I picked that up. A few X-Men I got as well. This is Uncanny X-Men 257. This is Wolverine and I believe Psylocke. It's been a while since I read this. It is indeed Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, as you can see by that beautiful picture there. Lady Mandarin, who I want to say at some point becomes who we know as Psylocke, but I may be completely off on that. They were doing all kinds of interesting stuff at that point in X-Men, so I'm not sure how much of that was actually ended up being canon, or I really have no idea what's going on at that point in the book, so I have to go back and read it. Now, a couple last things. The Jim Starlin run I talked about. So I found these issues of DC Comics Presents, and that is definitely Jim Starlin with Mongol there. I don't know how much he had to do. I'll have to ask him at the maybe next time I see him at a show, either Heroes Con or Baltimore, because there's a lot of stuff in here. I mean, it's just beautiful Jim Starlin artwork. It looks like he did the inks on it as well. There's a cavalcade of DC writers on this run with him of DC Comics Presents. Most of it takes place in space. This one's Len Wein, and as you look at some of the stuff, look at that down in the corner there. If that doesn't look like, I mean, I don't know if we're just adding Mongol to the list of villains that came after Darkseid, where that's Thanos and High Lord Papal, I think, in Dreadstar. It's all very this is very space centered, these issues of the book, and I didn't realize. I'm curious how much Jim had to do with the creation of Mongol and War World and all of War World. Sorry, that's a tongue twister, because it does seem like it's right up his alley, the kind of space opera that he does a lot of. So, and then the backup stories in these books are whatever happened to a particular DC character. This one's whatever happened to Johnny Thunder, who apparently, I was thinking the Thunderbolt guy, but no, this is Johnny Johny, and it's a really cute little, by a writer I've never heard of, but it's a really cute little Western story with Gil Kane doing the art. So it's got that going for it, which to me is a good thing. But this is Superman and Supergirl in this issue. I neglected to mention that is issue 28. It is continued. I need to figure out where 29 is. I had to track that down. Number of issues later, DC Comics presents Superman and Starman. Again, still fighting with Mongol there. Who does that guy look like? Blonde hair, the staff or whatnot. Shades of Vanth Dreadstar, or maybe even Captain Marvel, or Marvel. On this one, Paul Levitz and Jim Starlin are the storytellers. It looks and reads very much. I mean, look at that Starlin. Look it up in the corner there. It's got some Marvel overtones to it there, but it reads very much like a lot of Starlin's cosmic stuff. But I had no idea this was out there. So DC Comics presents with Mongol and Superman. I don't know much about this Starman character, about that iteration of Starman. And then next is the very next issue, DC Comics presents 37 with Superman and Hawkgirl, and he's still in space. So it seems like this whole thing is more is kind of like a space story of Superman. It's pretty neat. I think Jim did the inks on that one too. It says plot and art, Jim Starlin. Oh, Roy Thomas wrote the script. So right there in the space of 10 issues, you've got Jim Starlin art, Len Wein, Paul Levitz, and Roy Thomas. I mean, that seems like a pretty cool run. So I'm looking forward to reading more of these and maybe trying to track down more of them. The other thing that's kind of cute at the end of the second story in this book is whatever happened to, and then Rip Hunter, Time Master, but it's kind of cute because it says whatever will happen to Rip Hunter, Time Master, because apparently he's from the future. Last two things real quick. Thanks for hanging in there with me, guys. One is Special Marvel Edition number 2, featuring the mighty Thor. This is a double feature special. What drew me to it was that really cool Sal Buscema cover, right? It just looks, it's got all the different absorbing man around him. I can't think of a time where the villain appeared 4 times on the cover when the hero only appeared once. Usually the floating head thing were heroes, like in Avengers, but they're all 4 of those side shots are of the absorbing man. The whole thing though is reprints. It's reprinted. It's reprinting a run of Thor. I don't know if it was Journey into Mystery at this point. The authors of the book were not kind enough to put the little, first appeared in such and such an issue, but it's basically the I don't know if it's the creation of the absorbing man, but a couple of things that jumped out at me about this book. Thor shows up looking for help against the absorbing man, and he happens to show up while 3 of Cap's kooky quartet, or the Capless kooky quartet, are there at Avengers Mansion. So it's Jack Kirby. You get to see him doing Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and Hawkeye, and Thor's just like, it just kind of blows Thor's mind. He's like, where are the Avengers? What's going on here? Are you guys the Avengers? Are you kidding me? Of course, he's saying it like in the old English. But he's like, it's nothing. I'll be on my way again. Through many battles have I fought shoulder to shoulder with the old Avengers. But these new, brash, arrogant youngsters, I cannot bring myself to request the aid of such as they. I mean, come on, guy. I don't know. It's just... I get it. I kind of get it now when Hawkeye would be calling him like a blowhard or whatnot. Well, that's it. He goes by Avengers Mansion for 2 pages, or really 1 page. My bad, and just kind of blows him off. Like, no, don't need your help. I feel like Quicksilver, and I mean, I know at that point the Scarlet Witch wasn't as overpowered as she became, but even so, I guess Thor's just. They're just not Thor's level, I guess. Some beautiful art in here. Yes, Vince Coletta does the inks, but it's just, it's Kirby, so how can you not like that? But the really wild thing to me is this is Special Marvel Edition, which according to CLZ is the same Special Marvel Edition where in a half a dozen issues or so, Shang-Chi first appears. So this is, Thor technically appeared in Shang-Chi's book before Shang-Chi did. I believe Special Edition number 1 is also Thor, and a few issues later it goes to some other stuff. But this is like one of those reprint books that they did, Marvel Triple Action, that kind of thing, Marvel Tales. But really wild to me that it ends up being the book that Shang-Chi's in as well. Started out with Thor. So last up, talking about the first appearance of Spider-Man. So not the amazing fantasy you might have expected, right? A little flimsier actually, but these things have. I found this copy. Oops, I found this copy at the comic shop, and it's just really neat. So I discovered these as a kid. They came in the paper, the Sunday paper, and there was an insert along where you'd find like the kids' newspapers or something we used to read back in the 20th century. They were made of actual paper, and inside the newspaper, in the middle where you'd have like the Sunday funnies, like the comic strips, that were in color on Sundays, and you had all the advertisements and that kind of thing. But these things started appearing too, and it says Spider-Man Collectible Series Volume Number 1, and what's wild about it is that it is the reprint. Now the ads, obviously, they didn't have Gogurt in 1963, but it's a reprint of the first, I don't want to say the first half, the Spider-Man part of Amazing Fantasy 15, because that wasn't there was more to that book, I think, than just the Spider-Man stuff. And it covers everything we've seen with the wheat cakes. It's literally a color reproduction, though the paper's better, a little bit better than the paper that was used on the original book. Well, I have to assume that I don't have the original book. But there's a part 1 and part 2, and by the end of it we have the famous pupiled Spider-Man shot. Obviously the Ultimate Rematch is a new ad, or came out whenever this book was actually published. 2000 and 2006, 8. No, this must be a second printing, because the ones that I remember, I don't know though. Come to think of it, I want to say maybe I already had my son at that point, and daughter, but though not in that order. And maybe she was getting it for him. Yeah, no, it's 2006. So yes, not when I was a kid. So first published in 1962 and 2006. So these were out when my son was little, and my mom, his grandmother, was collecting those because she knew I was into comics, and I guess obviously that my kids were too. So we had quite a run of these. I remember reading these to the kids. But the second issue contained the first half of Spider-Man 1, because those stories back then had multiple halves, like Amazing Spider-Man number 2. There's a Tinkerer story that takes up half the book, and there's the Vulture story that takes up half the book. So because they were split into basically two chapters, if you will, or of each Spider-Man book, they were able to split them up into these. It was only in later issues, maybe even maybe even Amazing Spider-Man number 3, but they went a half a dozen issues or so, or at least 5 or 6 issues before they had to split single books, but just because of the way Spider-Man came out. Anyway, that is all for this week's Heroes and Videos. Hope you enjoyed that little walk down memory lane. Going to have some new videos coming out with new comics. Definitely go watch Daredevil Born Again. Again, going to try to get a video up on that soon, because I have some takes on that. But love the show, and I'm really enjoying that. Looking forward to the Punisher special that comes out in a few weeks after the week after that, and Spider-Man, A Brand New Day. So in the meantime, thanks again for spending a little time here at Heroes and Videos. As always, keep reading comics, keep going to see movies in theaters, and be kind to each other.